Hey folks, welcome back to the Divided States of America show. I'm your host, Marlon Gardenera. It's Friday. I don't always do shows on Friday. Wasn't planning on doing one today, but you've heard the news. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul, was attacked with a hammer. We'll talk about it right here on the Divided States of America show.
Welcome to the Divided States of America show, where your host, Marlon Gardenera, takes on the most divisive issues in our divided nation. We'll sort through the best and worst of politics and culture, asking questions and looking for answers that our two-ring, two-party circus has failed to provide.
Welcome back, folks.
And here is your host, Marlon Gardenera.
I appreciate you tuning in. Last-minute episode of the Divided States of America show. Remember, the format has changed. I won't be here weekdays, noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to host and post shows when there's a quick take. I just got to get out there. We'll continue to grow the audience. We've hit 10,000 viewers. I appreciate each and every one of you who's taken the time to tune in. Most of our viewers are on Facebook. That's also where most of the commentary is, where most of the people are letting us know what they think both about the show and about the issues that we talk about here on a regular basis. Thank you for tuning in. Apologize. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul, was attacked in their home in San Francisco. Nancy Pelosi was not there. He was attacked with an assailant using a hammer. Been hospitalized, if I understand correctly, is in stable condition, at least as of the recording of this program. Let's hear a little bit more about it from, of all people, Fox News.
We are getting disturbing details of this attack on the 82-year-old husband of Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Paul Pelosi was apparently beaten with a hammer in the attack. He suffered blunt force trauma to his head and body, and we are told that he is currently in the hospital but is fortunately expected to make a full recovery. We're also told, rather disturbingly, that the Pelosi house was specifically targeted in this attack. That information coming to the Associated Press from their sources. The FBI, U.S. Capitol Police, are now assisting the San Francisco Police Department. Now, we first heard about this in a statement from Drew Hamill, who is spokesman for Speaker Pelosi. He said, quote, "Early this morning, an assailant broke into the Pelosi residence in San Francisco and violently assaulted Mr. Pelosi. The assailant is in custody, and the motivation for the attack is under investigation. Mr. Pelosi was taken to the hospital where he is receiving excellent medical care and is expected to make a full recovery." Now, Speaker Pelosi was not there at that house at the time. She was, we understand, in Washington, D.C. The big question is motivation. We may get some answers on that in a press conference with the San Francisco Police Department due in just about 30 minutes. Obviously, this could have been an opportunistic crime, somebody targeting that house because he thought the Pelosi's was away and could therefore burglarize it, or more disturbingly, it could have been politically motivated. We have seen previous political protests outside the Pelosi's house in San Francisco. It is well known, it is no secret that the Speaker lives there and owns that house. There were protests there in July 2020, as you see there, and graffiti was daubed on the house on New Year's Day 2021. Now, the attack has been condemned by people across the political divide. Republican John Dennis is running against Nancy Pelosi in the midterms. He said this was, quote, "an appalling act that deserves condemnation and contempt. No one has the right to violate another's property nor to initiate force on anyone else. The Pelosi's are neighbors," Mr. Dennis said. "My family and I wish a speedy recovery for Paul and swift justice for the assailant." The White House has also issued a statement saying the president is praying for Paul Pelosi and for Speaker Pelosi's whole family. President Biden apparently called Speaker Pelosi to express his support after what the White House called a horrible attack.
That's Fox News reporting of Paul Pelosi being attacked this morning in his home in San Francisco. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was not there. He has been hospitalized. I believe he's stable again at the time of this recording. Well, we're live. I can't keep saying recording. If you're watching on demand, when we posted it live, he was stable, and that's good news. You've heard condemnation, widespread condemnation, both sides, hopefully not too political, at least in pointing out the reality that an elderly person was attacked in their home. I don't care where you are, who you are, quite frankly, what your age is. We all have an issue with that happening to any and everyone. But it starts to beg the question, is this where we're going? It's early. We don't know the assailant's motivations, although he was heard shouting, "Where's Nancy? Where's Nancy?" which would lead one to believe he knew exactly where he was at, and he had someone in mind when he got there. But it begs the question, is this where we're going? Obviously, back in the BLM protest days, protests that turned to riots, cities like Seattle and Portland, and the pockets that were taken over by protesters demanding change, January 6th, there's been political violence going against both sides forever. But obviously this one captures the attention of quite a few people because it's the husband of the person third in line to be the president of the United States. I'll say it again, third in line, because a lot of questions are going to arise. There's crime everywhere. Why is this so important? Well, Nancy Pelosi is third in line to be president of the United States after the president and the VP, who's also the president of the Senate, and then Nancy Pelosi. So it certainly is high profile. It's early. I don't want to jump the gun and think that this is a new trend that's going to happen, but I wouldn't imagine that it's not inevitable that with the divide, with the rhetoric, with the rants, with so few people trying to solve problems, with so few people taking a look beyond winning points to try to win elections, I don't want to say where else could we go, because we certainly could get a lot better from where we are, but how many forces are actually trying to make things better? Who wants it to get better? People talk about it. But in the middle of election season, with the midterms less than 2 weeks away, most political pundits are taking advantage of the fact that things are happening and using that to say, you should vote for us. Not what could we actually do to make it better. It's more like, look what's happening and they're in charge. Look what happened when they were in charge. They're not doing anything to fix this or that. The details of any of those things are the last things people are actually talking about, which is sort of absurd, because if we got into the details of most things, you already know most people would agree on a lot more things. But America, with our version of politics, even when we have consensus, we can't necessarily get things done. But you do have to wonder, is this the beginning of more? I pray not. I hope not. I want not. But is anybody proud of who we are politically, where we are politically? Assuming you're not, like I'm not, assuming you don't see enough conversations to resolve these issues, to close the gap, to bridge the divide, where do you think we're going to go? Now, you understand the purpose of this show is to take on the most divisive issues in our divided nation. I'd like to have those conversations. Unfortunately, it's really difficult to get people who support things that they know are questionable to come on air and say, but I still believe it. They'll say it when the microphone is one way. They'll say it on social media where they can't really be challenged. But there's just not a lot of people that step forward and say, look, I stand behind these things. And I know these things are divisive, but I stand behind it and I don't care. Those are the conversations we want to have. That is the purpose of this program. Know that you can always go to Facebook, facebook.com/The DSA Show, to leave comments about these issues. I'm going to post this one. When we do, we get 500,000, 1,500 comments, and people will let you know where they stand. You just can't find enough of them with enough courage to come on air to have those conversations. Then, of course, it has to be politicized because it is 2 weeks from a midterm, and each side has to take their stance and understand, or at least try to paint a picture of who the other side is, what they represent. I didn't get to CNN or MSNBC. My guess is if we tried to put the most liberal slant on it, these are the people we're voting against. This is what the right looks like. These are the January 6 people gone wild. I haven't even been there. I haven't heard it. I'm just guessing. Based on the normal things we hear when people are trying to make a point to gain power, you point the finger to the other side, you paint with a broad brush, and you try to say, they're all bad. They must have been the ones behind this. These are those types of people. I didn't go there. I don't need to hear it. It's not that important to me at this moment. They weren't attacked. Nancy Pelosi was attacked, or excuse me, her husband was. And I want to try to stay focused there. At the same time, I wanted to give you reporting that goes against what I think the left could do with this and say, this is what you have to vote against. Those people, they are the same. They are January 6th rioters. We can't have that. I don't want a part of that. An individual walked in there, and I don't know their politics. I don't know what they believe. You can make a list of assumptions, and let's say some of those assumptions are right, and he was in fact looking for Nancy Pelosi. He doesn't define everybody on the right. Let's just be serious. But the right has a take too. They have a take too. And since I was using Fox to do the reporting, I'll show you, and we all know Tommy Lauren, I'll show you Tommy Lauren's take on what's just happened. Take a look.
What average everyday Americans feel that don't have the Capitol Police, that don't have the resources that the Pelosi family would have when something like this happens. Everyday people in San Francisco and major cities across the U.S. are in this culture of lawlessness where criminals, thugs, felons feel so emboldened to go and do something like this. The home invasions, the burglaries, I mean, it happens all the time in Hollywood. People that are routinely talking about defunding the police until it happens to them. It's a stark reality we have to face.
Culture of lawlessness. Where does that exist? What police department has been completely defunded, and as a result, crime in that particular area is through the roof? Where is that? Let's call lies lies. Culture of lawlessness? Where is that? Which police department has sat on their hands and decided we are no longer going to carry out our duties? And if there are some in protest of the fact that people want them to be held accountable, who would trust them anyway? So I'm just going to assume officers are doing what I know the great officers throughout our country are doing. They go to work, they do their job. Where is this culture of lawlessness happening as a result of defunding of police? Now, if you're just talking about people saying defund the police, let's keep in mind that that's a narrative also created primarily from the right. The words defund the police are not a national narrative. It's not what Joe Biden wants or has said. We've talked about reallocating funds for first responders who go to people in mental crisis. Certainly there can be an officer. Certainly you need someone prepared to use force to stop crimes from happening or stop people from getting hurt. But we also understand that oftentimes our law enforcement responds to mental health crisis and they're not trained to do it. The ones that are, let's go. But overwhelmingly, they're not trained mental health professionals. So the idea of bringing more mental health professionals to situations like that would help cities avoid the lawsuits where the officers go out not equipped and they just try to detain the person when de-escalation or tactics used within the mental health profession would be much better served. That has turned into defund the police. Why? Because it's a narrative that puts us versus them. It creates the divide. If you keep saying defund the police, even though you can't tell me what the police department in America has been defunded, and as a result of the defunding, the city is in chaos. Which one? Which one are we referring to? I'm going to ask the question, where does the divide come from? And then I'm going to say people like Tommy Lauren, who says defunding the police has created, and not these exact words, the talk of defunding the police has created cultures of lawlessness. Where? Where have the police laid down? Now, I know there are areas and pockets where people feel hopeless. I'm confident of that. If you think about the number of murders in the city of Chicago alone, you know what hopelessness looks like. You know what desperation looks like. You know what people who don't see opportunity or feel educated or feel as if the world isn't against them. You see some of the effects of that, which begs this question. If you're actually worried about crime and you know we're not fundamentally defunding the police around the country, you know those things to be true, but don't get me wrong, you'll keep spreading the lies so that you get one group of people to hate the other group of people so that the group of people you like maintain power. I'll just ask this question. You're highlighting crime. You highlighted specifically, if you listen to the full report, San Francisco, their crime numbers. They talked about democratic cities, crime in democratic cities. Well, number one, that's where most people live. There is more poverty there because there's more people there, and you get people from a wide spectrum. Don't get me wrong, there's plenty of poverty in rural areas, but there are more services and more opportunities in cities, so people go there to try to get those things. by their makeup alone, you're going to have a different demographic. But that's not the point of this. Fox News spent a lot of time trying to highlight this is what the crime looks like. Everyday Americans have to deal with this all the time and then paint the picture, well, defunding the police is what they want. No, it's not. Those are lies. What city is laid down? I've said that already, but I want to make sure we get that point across. But if you're actually concerned about crime, let me ask this. Economies normally have something to do with that. Post-COVID, the economy was pretty bad. When Trump left office, it was pretty bad. We've recovered. Jobs are back. Economic growth of 2.6% just reported yesterday. Inflation is killing people. Thankfully, wages are up some, or it would really be killing us. It's killing people on the margins, people who don't have a lot of money to spend, and something has to be done. We know efforts are being made to do that, but we're also spending our way straight through inflation. Luxury items, travel, dinners out, those things are all still happening because the demand is clearly high for economic growth. But as it relates to crime, if we were having real conversations and we were going full circle, there's normally a direct link between education and crime. There's normally a link between poverty and crime. Oftentimes, your health, lack thereof, leads to stressors and hopelessness associated with crime. Where are the people saying there's lawlessness on the issues of education and poverty? What policies do they plan on putting in places that are actually going to change the outcome of crime across America beyond just jailing people? Because when you jail one, there are others, there are children of others, there are communities, there are people in such bad situations where they think that is the road out. So where is the actual work being done on education and poverty to prevent people from going down that road to begin with? Because here's what I find ironic. Defunding the police is not happening around our nation. Police aren't just laying down and watching crime happen. Those are just the lies that you hear. That's just the picture that people are painting to win power. When they get in power, are they the people that you can entrust will take care of education for the hopeless? Are they the people who are going to try to step in and do something about poverty? Now, I don't need to paint a picture of what the right's position typically is on things like education and poverty. Parents want to take certain books out, whether they've read them or not. Parents want to shield their kids from things that they don't agree with. Got it? Parents are very clear that they should be in charge, not the teachers. Well, we have a teacher shortage. People don't get paid enough. Nobody wants to pay more in taxes. If we took a look at the whole full circle before a criminal becomes an actual criminal, are the people complaining about crime in the cities willing to do anything before people become criminals? That would be a full circle conversation. Not just the point where a criminal goes and steals something, not when someone feels helpless and they self-medicate on drugs. Everything that goes into it before. So I find it ironic that crime is looked at in windows where blame is assigned and they're using things like bail reform. I've covered this. If two people go to jail, one person has money and the other person doesn't, and they both committed the same crime, and there's the same level or concern about violence or lack thereof, and one of them can get out on bail and go back to work on Monday, they could probably afford a better attorney, pay their rent, keep their lights on, keep their family fed. The person without money could be just as innocent, and remember, in America, you're innocent until proven guilty, but because they can't afford bail, they lose their job, they lose their home, they can't feed their family, but both people are in the same situation. Bail reform isn't about letting criminals go. You're not a criminal until you've been convicted. Bail reform is about keeping some people in jail really based on who's got money and who doesn't, not based on the severity or what you're accused of. Violent criminals, judges, they have discretion to try to figure out, is this person a further risk? And while everyone is, even people who've never committed a crime before, albeit less likely, people talk about bail reform like it's just about letting criminals go. That's not what bail reform is about. But we don't dig into the issues enough to actually understand what we're talking about. People with money who can afford bail also continue to commit crimes. People with no money who may be let out now because money shouldn't be the sole factor in whether or not you have to sit in jail awaiting your day in court will too. But those aren't the pictures we paint. We don't have real discussions. We don't complete ideas and concepts and discussions that take you from here to here. We just paint this picture over and over and over again. It's disgusting. I don't get it. I don't understand. We need to have better conversations than that. And let's keep something else in mind. Criminals don't care who's in office. They don't care who the mayor is. They don't, quite frankly, care who the sheriff is. They don't care who the council members are. They don't care who the governor is of your state. And they don't care who's in the White House, who's in Congress, who's in the... They don't care. When you break into someone's house, you're not wondering what politician is sitting in office and what's going to happen. They're void of risk assessment and concern. Many of them with mental health issues. Many of them are addicted. Many of them desperate. I don't want to make excuses for anyone. When you cross that line and you put your issues on someone else, you are a criminal and you need to be dealt with. It should be adjudicated. You should be punished. You should be in prison. There should be remedies to keep you away from other people. No questions from me at all. But let's stop acting like who the president is determines what the crime rate's going to be. That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. Well, he was in office when it happened. Okay, I'll give you that one. But that's the lazy thinking that doesn't really need a bunch of thought, doesn't really need a bunch of conversation. Police officers are working to do their best to stop crime, prevent crime, show up when crime happens. DAs, what they're charging people for and not charging people for, it's interesting. Again, if you lined up all the cases, in some cases, someone who did something small ends up doing something huge. There are cases where people did something big, they serve their time, and they live doing nothing wrong in the future. But we highlight the instances of someone going from small to big as if that's the face of it all. We don't look at any other injustice. We don't look at any other statistics. We don't look at anything but what makes what we like and what we want seem good. It's just lazy. The divide is there because we're lazy, because we're simple and just want to hear people that say things we like to hear. Doesn't matter what the truth is. Doesn't matter what the details are. It's just pure lazy. You can find it everywhere. Again, if you want to lower crime, what is your stance? Where are your dollars, resources, concern, priority, legislation about education and poverty? Because if you're not tackling those things, but you're worried about crime, you're lying to yourself, and you're lying about the results you expect to see down the line, period. Crime in cities. Hey, listen, saw something earlier. I'll pull up this little map here. This is a map where the murder rate has increased by more than 40%. Now, I don't want to fall into the same trap of trying to say democratic cities is where all the crimes are. I already told you the demographics of cities make it different to begin with. But let's put that aside. The murder rate in red states was on the rise. They're not talking about states. We can only pick out cities. We can't talk about red states. If we were talking about education, would we talk about cities or would we talk about red states? That's the point. There are more details even in murder rates in red states or people who voted for Trump, as the report I'm referencing talked about. There's more to it than that. There is more to it than that. Something simple like some of the big cities are still in red states. So when the city's crime go up, so do the statistics for the red state. But that's the laziness that leaves out all the details for us to actually look at what's happening and look for solutions. We're not. We're looking for power. What they do with power doesn't change regardless of who's in the White House. People, if we don't speak up and start talking about the divide, it's going to get worse. There'll be more attacks. There'll be more riots. There'll be more harm done to Americans when most of us don't even pay attention to all the details. But at the end, we're not going to have anybody to blame but ourselves because we fall into the simpleton category of just believing what they put out there without considering any of the details. We don't have enough conversations. We're not real with each other. I'll continue to challenge Trump supporters to come on the show and be real. Have some courage, stand behind what you believe, and let's talk. Not a debate, not who won. I don't understand some of the things places you come from. If you've got questions from Biden supporters, people who support the left, people on the left, come on the show and tell us why you think what you think. But let's go full circle. Let's not just throw out a rant and duck and hide, and we'll tune into that and just keep hearing that over and over and over again till you believe that a blue city might not be in a red state. Because those details will be overlooked depending on who's telling you about the details. It's that simple. I don't know. The divide is clear. If you're looking around for messages, our politicians are going to speak with rancor, disrespect, hatred, division. Don't ask where the divide comes from. People identify with those people. They like them. They believe what they believe. They share their beliefs. They share their party, and they move forward. Goes the same on the other side. All the problems in the world can be solved by government. Nonsense. Real conversations would be the difference. People interested in solving the problems as opposed to just getting power would be the difference. We just don't do it enough. We don't even come close. We don't even come close. That's it for today. I see a comment posted. Marlon, have you ever considered the fact that your rhetoric leads to a wider divide? I have to. I can't ignore that I have strong feelings one way or the other. I can't. I wish I could. I wish I could be completely neutral. But there are some things that I feel stronger about than others, and I understand that other people feel the same. Really. Next comment, you desperately want Trump supporters to come on your show. Why don't you ask for a conservative to come on your show and balance your left-leaning stance? Any day, any time. I don't want to shield you from any real discussion from anyone. It's not as if only because of the invitation to Trump supporters, conservatives feel like they can't come on and explain anything they believe or don't believe. But most people actually couldn't articulate their beliefs. They need to be told what to believe. They need to hear, "Ooh, that I like that. I'm going to go with that." They don't actually look at crime and think education, poverty. They don't actually go blue cities, high crime might be in a red state. Whoa, way too deep, way too much. The point of this show was to have those discussions, were to field comments. And again, I'll post on this, so you'll see 1,000 comments, but you're not going to see a lot of thoughtfulness. You're not going to see a lot of respectful exchanges where they continually explore ideas. You're going to see a lot more people just spouting off something ridiculous and then gone. Ask them a real question, they're not going to answer. And that happens on both sides. But there is no part of what I believe or what I want that is going to include going to any conservative or Trump-supporting politician or advocate or activist and beating them down with a hammer. No part of that. Zero. Nothing about my politics makes me want to go to war over it. And Jody, I'll remind you, I took on California's Governor Newsom. He's a Democrat. Took him head on. Fought for children where I live, and then all 58 counties in the state of California, saying, you're not better equipped to make decisions about what restrictions my children should have during COVID. So while you believe my stance may be left-leaning, I, versus 99.9% of MAGA supporters, with help, I wasn't alone, took on a Democrat, much more so than 99.9% of conservatives. So when there is something that is a problem for me that I don't agree with, party is not a factor. Whoever is responsible for what I don't think is right, we will take on. But that doesn't mean I'm showing up at their house with a hammer. It doesn't mean I'm going to be looking for their wife. It doesn't mean I'm looking for the person third in line for the White House. It doesn't mean that my politics are such that I couldn't possibly hear or even agree with someone on the other side. It just means we aren't making any progress. We aren't getting anywhere. We're getting worse. We have people showing up at elections with weapons. We're going the other way. We're going to places that you hear about on news reports in third world countries, and it blows my mind, And the people who are on the same side as that act as if it doesn't even exist. Likewise, I know there were riots during BLM. I'll be the first one to say that was absurd and ridiculous. Most of them were just low-life looters, nothing better to do, opportunistic losers. And then there were people who were saying, I can't believe I have to say in 2021, 2020, Black Lives Matter. I mean, why do we even have to say that? America doesn't appreciate all Americans. It's not about, illegal immigrants versus, natural-born citizens. There's always an us versus them. Whenever the them exists, they don't have rights equal or the same either. More comments. Pretty sure seems to be a factor that since you refer to all conservatives as MAGA. Actually, I don't believe that. I put up a show just recently, Let the Separation Begin Between Conservatives and MAGA. And I have long called and had personal conversations with conservative friends of mine of how do you tolerate some things, and what they normally say is we don't. We don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. But I'm not leaving my party to go to the other side because I fundamentally don't agree with this, and this. So you missed the episode where it clearly stated, let the separation begin between conservatives and MAGA. When I was a conservative for over 20 years, I would not have identified with anything, nothing, zero about MAGA, but I completely identified with many of the basic principles behind conservatism. That has changed. I have moved more to the left. I don't look at someone that's LGBTQ and think they're a threat to anything. I don't worry that LGBTQ people are going to attack Republican Congress members. Now, I'm sure it can happen as a one-off, but it's not as a body, a group that I expect to go cause harm or do harm to other people. Quite frankly, I think racists are the absolute worst terrorists in American history. But all of a sudden, trans people are the ones you have to worry about? They're the ones that are a threat to you? How so? Why? Has one come into your home? Has one done damage to you? Not liking what someone else believes, is that what you think the damage is? Well, I don't like racists. If the states that are banning abortion allow people to sue and get $10,000, can I sue for every instance of racism for a maximum of $10,000? Can we change the laws so that racism is as illegal and easy to sue for as abortion in red states? Let's square it up, people. Let's square it up if we want to tackle the issues in America. I'd love to. We have people showing up to baseball games with guns who shot a member of Congress. Yeah, I remember that Bernie Sanders supporter. I remember condemnation from all sides about how ridiculous that was. I remember that. I can't make an excuse for that. I can't say that it's right. I can't say that I agree. That person should be in jail for the rest of their lives, blah, 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 blah. These are common sense things, though. I didn't talk about Republicans not taking care of mental health throughout that person's life, so they deserve to get shot. Come on, who talks like that? Who talks like that? I said it earlier. The broad brush that the left may be painting about the right is that, hey, this is where the right's going. We saw January 6th. This is just a natural progression. They wanted Pence then. They were looking for Pelosi then. Why would they stop doing it now? I don't believe in that nonsense. I recognize there are some people who want that. Some people who are going to do that. But most Americans are good. Just not good enough to be a little more thorough, to require a little bit more honesty, a little bit more integrity, and aren't quite as lazy to just accept the narratives as provided. But my open invitation to MAGA allows this show not to have a lean in any direction. It allows anyone at any time to come on to comment. Those will be placed on air so that it balances and, more importantly, leads to conversations where we get a better understanding where we're going, where we are, why we're there, and what can we do to make it any different. I'll say this, 10,000 viewers isn't enough to get one MAGA supporter on with the courage to help explain some things. One conservative on to explain some things. And I may not be the person for them because in our current climate, only people who agree with you want to listen. I don't want to listen to somebody I don't agree with. I get it. But as it relates to the divide in America, that gap will not close until the two sides are talking, until they literally talk to each other. The right isn't going to solve the problems the left thinks are or should be a priority. The left is not going to solve the problems the right thinks are or should be priorities. And because the country is close to evenly divided, neither side is ever going to get what they're looking for until they talk. That's it for today. I appreciate your comments. I appreciate your feedback. I'll be posting about this particular topic, which means there will be plenty of feedback. You're going to hear from lots and lots of people on what they think of this situation. And I'll even make note of how it's been politicized. And we'll see what people think. Appreciate you tuning in to the Divided States of America show. Again, we're not here weekdays, noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. We're going to drop them as close to noon as possible. I'll try to get it at noon every day, but we won't be here every day. Starting a local show too. But I'm going to keep growing the audience, and we're going to get to the point where we are having those thoughtful, respectful conversations right here on the Divided. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great weekend.
Thanks for watching the Divided States of America show. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to the channel and share this video with your family and friends.